How is everybody doing today? My name is Master Zero, and welcome back to another reaction video. This time we're reacting to What Happens After a God Dies by Curious Archive. Alright, so first things first, huge shout out to Alexandru. Thank you so much for the suggestion, and just like, the thing alone, you know, the title is just like, what happens after a god dies? Like, that definitely sparked my curiosity, you know? So, it kind of in the same vein of the title of the channel, you know, just Curious Archives. So, I'm very excited to dive into this, but I do not know what this is about, if it's based on anything, like a book or something that I've known to accept in the past, you know? I've tried to read the description, but it was pretty vague, and I didn't want to get, like, too into it to, like, spoil anything, so I'm just sitting here pondering what exactly this is about, but for good reason, man. Like, that definitely sparks my interest and curiosity, like I stated before. Like, it just makes me very just questioning everything, so I'm very excited to get this going. So without any further ado, here's What Happens After a God Dies. Hello.
I've come face to face with a god.
That's a god?
He lives in the sky.
Nothing I'm familiar with.
Giant flying whale.
Hey, okay, Legend of Zelda, let's go.
If you've played the game Skyward Sword,
okay, I have not actually.
Levias,
I haven't played that many Zelda games. Gonna be real here.
Awe-inspiring sight for a Wii game.
Oh, that is beautiful. A Wii game.
I spent hours circling around this deity, at times coming so close to divinity I felt I could reach out and touch it.
Oh man, you're wording.
So you can imagine my excitement when I learned that Breath of the Wild, a game set
God, I need to pick that game up. My brother has it.
Also includes Levias.
Oh, he's dead. I was about to... Oh. So I'm assuming that's where this subject came from.
Come to an end. But what happens
oh my
after
god.
a god dies?
I was wondering what type of god they would talk about, like Norse or Greek.
Rotting away to nothing? Or would they linger, their figures forever changing the surrounding environment?
That's a great question. Hey, Guardians of the Galaxy. Nowhere.
Would they ever?
As soon as it shows a superhero, I'm like, hey, I know that. Okay, this is very bizarre, in the best of ways, by the way. Oh. Maybe
the
down?
short film The Drowned Giant is about...
That's a real film?
A drowned giant, obviously.
I could see.
But that obviousness is
I hate that the eyes are open. I mean, obviously, you die, your eyes don't magically close like Hollywood says.
The giant's corpse is a blunt truth, something the narrator and other locals cannot ignore or rationalize.
They are CGI, right? Obviously, the big guy is.
It's at first treated as a deity, the crowd reverential and apprehensive.
Oh, this is like Uncanny Valley.
Something changes. This colossus, be it god or monster, begins to rot. Oh. And just like that, the spell is broken. The townspeople swarm the fallen titan, clamoring over its immense form, as if trying to re-establish their own importance relative to the super being. Over the following days, animals
descend upon the Thanos quote, you make a god bleed, people stop believing in it.
Disfigurement of the remains. Though disturbed by the general lack of respect, the narrator cannot, in the end, resist the urge to climb upon the corpse himself.
Oh, this is giving me goosebumps, man.
The giant's decay, its decomposition, is what strips away its godhood in the eyes of the masses, speaks to the inherent paradox of a dead deity. In most classical mythologies,
even the kids,
is the pastime of mortals.
Yeah.
What makes a god is their immortality.
Immortality, yeah.
The narrator has the sense
take a page from Hercules.
That something so powerful in life must still hold power after death.
Bet you anything it doesn't tell you how it died either. Keep that a mystery.
Soon, people see it as just another piece of trash, an unsightly obstruction that should be disposed of.
Oh,
they
I hate that.
eventually decide to cut the body into sections and haul it away piece by piece. The Drowned Giant is ultimately a melancholy examination of mortality, of how any being can be disrespected and forgotten, no matter how
Vibe definitely changed from the Zelda talk.
It is one thing to gaze upon the corpse of a god.
Exoblade got it. Haven't played that either.
It is another thing entirely to know a god before it falls.
Yeah.
And know a god after. In the Xenoblade games,
drastic change, man.
Are so numerous, it's actually
I love the size comparison. I need to play that now.
That is, except for in the third game, which makes things simpler by turning all titans into lifeless husks that now make up the landscape.
Oh, I low-key love that, though.
Too much to get into, trust me. But the tragedy here is pretty straightforward. Here are the
Not the
shells
morbidness
of
it.
that you know if you've played the other titles in the series. The game doesn't draw attention to these remnants either, which is notable.
They're just in the background?
It is, on balance, a pretty loud franchise. Instead, the remains quietly fade into
So I'm assuming the third one drastically changed.
Don't even remember what they were.
Everyone's a prisoner to time, man.
About Levias's corpse in Breath of the Wild. You know, aside from
Oh,
my
going back to
celestial
the
friend being a pile
whale
of
guy.
bones,
Yeah,
is
that's
the fact
sad.
that no one seems to remember this deity. There are some researchers who debate his identity, but they assume he was just a large extinct animal, not the god I knew him to
Oh.
be. But I really can't judge, because there are actually other giant whale skeletons scattered throughout this game. When I first saw these, I didn't pay much attention. As it turns out, they're actually the remains of other whale gods from throughout the series.
Link's
Lost
Awakening I have
deities
played.
that I didn't even know about. For beings that were once worshipped, it's hard to imagine a more tragic fate.
I guess
These gods
death
haven't
comes
just
for us all,
died.
huh?
They've been forgotten.
Even gods. Hey,
One
speaking of
isn't
God,
likely to forget
God of
the
War.
deities of the God of War saga. In the current
Yeah, he goes
series
on a
based
freaking
Norse
slaughterhouse.
mythology, clashes
Not necessarily
between
that one,
gods and
but
other divine beings
once before
regularly
that.
reshape the landscape. The sheer scale of godly power
It's so
that these
cool,
games
man.
capture is
Kinda
just
hope he talks about, like,
astounding,
the Hades
creating
fight and all
countless
that.
Unforgettable moments. It's curious, then, that the experience that stuck in my mind the most wasn't meeting a living god, but a dead one. Midway through the first game in the Norse saga, you arrive upon the mountainous corpse of Thamur. Though technically a giant rather than a god, in-game lore suggests Thamur
I was about to
had
say,
the
you could
power
argue
to
that-
challenge Thor himself. A
Hey.
power so great it
He be a
continues
god,
to
at
shape
least
the
a deity.
world in death. Even decaying, Thamur's body emits a maelstrom of cold that has frozen the surrounding ecosystem.
Like you said at
an
the very
effect you
beginning,
can
man, he just
see from
turns into the
miles away.
landscape.
His sheer mass also flattened an entire
There's some beauty
village
behind
when
that
he first fell.
morbidness.
This idea is also present in the Greek God of War titles.
Hey, that's the ones I was talking about, man.
Member had an immediate and apocalyptic effect on whatever
Yeah,
domain they had
and that's the
authority
third one.
over. Unlike the other fallen gods discussed so far, Thalmor still holds influence over the environment in his icy, cadaverous grip. You don't just observe the power of Thalmor's corpse from a distance, though. You have to climb it. And the act of scrabbling up the side of this colossus, like I was one of the townsfolk from the Drowned Giant,
Okay.
conveyed to me the
Full
scale
circle,
of a
baby.
god's power better than any of the series' most gonzo action beats. When I recently replayed Breath of the Wild, I tried clambering up the Leviathan skeletons, an experience that reminded me just how small I was in comparison, and that even in
You know, I'm a
death,
sucker for size
these
comparison.
gods, too, still hold power. At a glance, it doesn't seem like there's a dead god in the game Jusant. What there
Whoa,
is,
I've never heard of that before.
dominating every frame, filling every inch of your thoughts, is the mountain. And your
Uh-huh.
job, your singular goal, is to reach the summit.
Is the
As in
mountain
God
a
of War,
giant
The
being?
very act of climbing in Jusant feels like a form of worship. Every handhold is a prayer. Every completed route a
That's
hymn
an
to the
understatement.
mountain's power. Jusant also requires you to make these leaps of, well,
Faith?
Faith, for
Literally.
lack of a better word, where you're suspended on nothing but a rope and the trust that the mountain will
I
hold
don't know
you.
about that.
It is in these moments that
Oh,
you
that's
can get
so
the
cool,
closest to
though.
fathoming the true
Never heard of this
size
game.
the mountain's body, to comprehend
And you have a
the
grip meter?
extent of its power. You encounter the
Oh.
remains of multiple civilizations as you make your way to the peak.
Oh, that's so
Cultures that
pretty.
rose and fell entirely within
Love
its
this art
shadow.
style.
It is clear in the art that these societies have left behind that this mountain was something they worship.
Oh, I love old
To the
school art,
people
man.
who
Whether it be
lived upon its
caveman,
body,
hieroglyphics,
the mountain
anything like
was,
that.
Is a kind of god.
Uh-huh.
And this
Okay, I see what
god
he's doing.
Has died. There is a sense that the present day
Yeah, there's
peak
no
is a
more people
husk,
anymore.
A dried out skeleton of its former self.
Man, I got the
The
goosebumps,
wreckage
dude.
of boats, fishing equipment, and withered coral that scar the landscape indicate a vast ocean once surrounded this region. The game's
God,
very
what
title,
happened?
Jusant, a French maritime term for a period of low tide,
Oh, thank you.
supports this narrative.
I'm not
Without
fluent
getting
in
into
French.
spoilers, there's evidence this
Thank you.
drought came from human activity throwing the ecosystem out of balance.
Mm.
This
Sounds
mountain
familiar.
was a god, and we have killed it.
Oh, when you put it that way.
There is a polluted, corpse-strewn deity on the face of the earth. Its name is Mount Everest.
Oh, okay.
Actually,
Going back to the mountain.
Chowmalungma in native Tibetan.
Love that.
Meaning goddess mother of the world.
Love
The
it even
name
more.
Everest comes from Welsh cartographer George Everest.
All these
a
rich
man
people
who
ruined it,
famously
man.
disliked the idea of a deified peak being named after an outsider. But the name stuck with the English-speaking world, and so too did an obsession with scaling this icy god.
Yeah.
Today, hundreds of people climb the summit every year.
Like I said,
Many
man,
of
rich
whom
people
are
ruined that
wealthy,
experience.
Inexperienced outsiders following well-traveled routes. Yet Chowmalungma,
It's not even a,
or Everest,
like,
still
goal
holds
anymore. It's
frigid,
just a milestone they
unpredictable
check
power.
off.
In his book Into Thin Air, author John Krakauer writes a first-hand account of the 1996 Everest
The artwork's so
disaster,
simple, but it
a
works,
blizzard
man.
in which 8 climbers lost their lives.
Oh.
This event was a tragedy, but
I'll
also
say.
not uncommon. Since the 1920s, over 300
I remember there was that pit
people
that,
have
like,
died trying to
everybody
reach the
just
peak,
dies
a
in,
staggering
essentially.
1/3 of whom have been guides from the Sherpa community, an ethnic
Oh.
group indigenous to the Himalayan subregion. Outsiders have long relied on Sherpa guides to make it to the top of the mountain. Edmund Hillary, often
God, they need
called the
way
first
more
person to
recognition,
summit
though.
Everest, did so alongside Sherpa mountaineer Tenzing Norgay.
Did he get
Guides
recognition?
faced significant exploitation and inconsistent safety
Climbers
measures,
need to wake up,
often
yeah.
carrying much of a client's gear. Between oxygen tanks, tents, and food containers,
That's just
literal
messed
tons of
up, man.
garbage have been left on the slopes.
What humans do to the
In their
world.
haste to
And that's just
ascend to
one
God,
location.
tourists have left her body disfigured and the community disrupted.
Kind of like the giant at the
In
beginning.
the epilogue
I see where
of
this is
Into Thin
going,
Air,
man.
Krakauer relays an account of a Sherpa orphan lamenting the state of the sacred mountain, stating, "Outsiders find their way into the sanctuary and violate every limb of her body
Yeah.
by standing on top of her.
That's why I don't
harming
want to
and
actually,
victory,
like,
enduring
visit
and
Japan.
polluting her.
I don't want to
For
be
many, climbing
recognized as
Everest is
the white
clearly
person,
not
you
an
know?
act of worship.
Lack of a better word. Stupid American. It's like I actually want to respect
There's
their culture.
something wrong with the holy mountain in Horizon Zero Dawn.
Hey!
I could tell there was
I
something
didn't finish
wrong
it,
from
but
the start of the
I have
game.
played that.
When I looked up and saw these eldritch metal tentacles spilling
Very
out of the
fascinating
mountain like
world.
mechanical intestines.
Especially the
Post-apocalyptic
dinosaurs
title,
made out of
Horizon is full
electronics.
of the wreckage of civilization, the skeletons of buildings and cars and lampposts.
Yeah, it's like
And
not
for the
only do you
most
have like
part, these
our world
ruins feel
buildings, but you also
benign.
have like a
The only thing
civilization
menacing
before
about them
or
is
after
that
us.
They imply that some terrible fate befell humanity.
Yeah.
But the ruins
All
on the
honesty,
Holy
good, man. Humans are
Mountain don't
terrible
feel
to the world.
benign. They feel like a disease. It isn't the exterior of the mountain that the survivors in
Spoilers.
Horizon worship, however. It's the interior, a chamber containing a god called All-Mother. To the
Ooh.
viewer, it quickly becomes clear that this god is a fragment of ancient technology, one the
Uh-huh.
survivors revere for saving them
Is it
from
AI?
an apocalyptic
Like I said, I
danger.
didn't get very
The
far.
tentacled corpse smote upon the mountainside also has a name, although it isn't called a god. It's called the Metal Devil.
I was about to say, is that the
Once you hear
devil?
that name,
Literally the
story of
exact
what
opposite.
happened to the world starts to fall into place. In fiction, the corpse of a devil has a very different presence than the corpse of a god. In the Studio Ghibli film Nausicaa
God, I
of
knew
the
it was
Valley
Studio
of the
Ghibli.
Wind, civilization was wiped out by biomechanical weapons of mass
Oh.
destruction called
me guess, we
God
made it?
warriors, although most survivors now see these creatures as demons. But in both Nausicaa and Horizon, there are
Oh, this is making me wanna
characters
play
who
that game
seek
again.
power in these accursed remains, attempting to wield the rotting, long-fallen devils against their enemies. We're getting into spoiler territory here.
I'm okay
but
with
each
that.
narrative attempts to wield these demonic weapons end in further apocalyptic disaster. The characters
Why, man? Why would you want to
inevitably
destroy
losing
the
control,
world you're living
undone
in?
by the same human arrogance that had previously destroyed the world. It's no accident that both these stories contrast these remains with nature, framing them as the consequence of disrespecting the natural order. Ultimately, these demonic corpses
that is,
feel
like,
humanity's
unironically pretty to
punishment
look
for
at.
trying to play God.
Like a corrupted sort of way.
Human hubris can become its own fallen god. There's a decomposing colossus punishing the characters in the 2014 Russian movie Leviathan, and it's not the giant
Oh.
mysterious whale skeleton you see throughout the runtime, or at least, not entirely. The true deity putrefying in the background of Leviathan is, instead, a societal one. All of civilization that we see throughout
Said it
the
before,
film
man. He's got a
feels
way
like
with
it's
words.
rotting from the inside out, infested with governmental corruption.
Oh, yeah,
The
that'll do
film's
it.
title appears to reference the Hobbesian Leviathan, or at least an idealized version of it.
Oh.
The deity of society one buys into for a nation to function.
Never heard
In
of
the
that.
film,
They're
this
showing a lot of
deity
stuff I've
is
never heard
rapidly
of.
Decaying. Wooden ships like rib cages collapse upon the shore.
Oh,
A
yeah.
fish processing plant calls to
Oh.
mind a slowing circulatory system. All the workers inside the final blood cells dragging this organism along before the inevitable.
Oh,
A condemned
man.
house is picked apart like a
I guess you
beached
could argue
whale,
that, like,
first by stragglers,
the
and
culture
then by the
is a
apex
body, and
predator
all the
of a
people inside it, or the
demolition machine.
organisms.
Though not technically set in the post-apocalypse, this world seems to have died a long time ago, and is only now beginning to stink.
Oh man, going back to the
Part
decay of the
why
god.
Dead Leviathans
Oh, I
in
love his
Breath of the Wild
storytelling, man.
struck such a chord with me has less to do with the state of the remains and more to do with the state of the world around them. Though it doesn't always look like it, Breath of the Wild is a true post-apocalyptic narrative set
I kinda
after
got that vibe, even though I never played it
destroyed
before.
much of civilization.
That'll do
This
it.
devastation is embodied in the appearance of another deity in the series. In Skyward Sword, the goddess Hylia is represented by a shining statue, fitting for an era of relative prosperity. In Breath of the Wild, the statue of Hylia is overgrown, forgotten in a half-demolished
that is
cathedral
crazy,
abandoned
man.
years ago. It's a testament to how much of the
Obviously the
world has
theme,
been
it's like
lost
something that was
post-calamity.
worshipped is just
I
to
think
sit there to
that's what I was
decay
really
now.
mourning. Not just Levias, but the larger abstract
All of it,
Leviathan
like the
of a
whole
functioning
world.
society.
I get it,
Not
man.
a Hobbesian one, but a kind of community that wouldn't have forgotten the dead so easily. But must a fallen
What's that
god
saying where like you
represent an
technically you
end,
die
or could
twice?
it also
Your actual
represent
death,
a
and then
new
when
beginning?
everyone forgets about
Though
you?
less common, there
very
are
sad to think
stories where a
about.
god's death brings new life.
I love
the
that art
remain
style,
serving
man.
as a foundation upon
Every
which
single one of
something
these
new
shots is
built.
beautiful.
The Marvel
Obviously the
comic city of
superhero one.
Noldor is built in the skull of a fallen celestial.
Yeah,
Basically,
and they're
that
just
universe's
mining it.
equivalent of a god. In the animated series The Owl House, an
Ooh.
entire civilization thrives on the bones of a still rotting deity. I've said the word
It's a little on the nose,
rot
though.
a bunch in this video.
Yeah.
But in nature, rotting isn't something inherently negative.
It's
The
like the
decomposing
next step.
remains of a leviathan like a whale can feed other life
And it's the
forms
circle
for
of life,
years,
man.
even decades. Such events are called whale falls, and while I talk more about them in my
Hey, Shadow of
video on Dead
Colossus.
Worlds, it's worth reiterating just how much life these sea gods bring to the ocean floor.
That's
Their
very
skeletons
true.
becoming miniature ecosystems. Has such a life form even died? But there
It's
is
kind of
another
passing its
kind
own
of
life to
godless
others in a
skeleton
way, you
that
know?
produces
Oh, is that
another
Subnautica?
kind
I was
of
about to
rot.
say, dude.
The eeriest region in
That's
the
stapled
game
in my brain.
Subnautica is the Lost River, a noxious environment.
I think they're called Leviathans too, if I'm not mistaken.
And at the center of this fallout are the bones of the gargantuan
Something so
Leviathan,
special
a
about that
creature
game,
so
man.
much larger than the other in-game life forms.
Yeah.
It borders on the divine. There's a sense that the Leviathan's decomposition is what's creating this poisonous brine, that its power still haunts the environment even after death. But even here, there are creatures that have adapted to this briny wasteland. In fact, some species
Rawr.
seem to flourish down here, their entire life cycle tied to these
Maybe they
pestilent remains.
adapted and
Life
to
upon
the
such
decay,
polluted, adversarial
use it as their
Leviathan
advantage.
is a struggle. It's unpleasant, but it's still a life.
That's an understatement.
On Earth,
Oh,
polluted
going
holy
back to the
sites are
freaking-
rarely
Look what
abandoned
humans
by the
have
people
done!
who worship them.
I hate it.
There
I
are no
hate it so
statistics
much,
on how many
man.
bodies of water or mountains have been contaminated over the years, but a quick search shows you the
Oh my
numbers are
God.
in the hundreds, if not the thousands.
I was about to say, are
Many
you
of
sure
these
it's not
sites are
thousands?
still regularly visited by individuals who must risk their own health to continue their way of life. And most of these sacred landmarks are far from beyond saving. Even Everest, despite the severity of its trash accumulation, could be made into a healthy region once more. But it would require effort.
There's that
to
shroud of
change the way
hope,
these
man.
places are
It
unprotected.
is possible.
It
We
would
have to just
require
clean up
struggle.
after ourselves, man. It's not that hard.
Hyper Light Drifter is a game.
I mean, now
about
it is because
fighting
we
for your
accumulated
life,
it so
no
freaking
matter
much.
The conditions or the
What are
fallen
you?
titans before you. At least, I think that's what it's about. See, Hyperlight Drifter doesn't contain a single line of dialogue.
I do kind of like stories like that, though. It's like they make you
entirely
piece
through
it together.
visual and environmental storytelling.
That's morbid.
And the visuals that
This whole
leave the
video is
biggest
morbid.
impact are easily the
Borderline
remains of the
bittersweet in a way.
Titans. These immense beings lie scattered throughout the world,
Whoa.
and their presence is, well, it's disheartening to say the least. Because there is a rot, a sickness, slowly overtaking the character you play as,
Oh.
seemingly related to whatever
Bud.
wiped out the Titans. Though there's evidence the
symbiotic.
Titans weren't the nicest creatures, if these
Are Titans ever
beings,
nice?
these gods have all perished, what chance do you have?
Okay, when you put it that way.
Hyperlight Drifter is rooted in personal experience. Lead designer Alex Preston was born with a deteriorating heart disease, which
Oh.
he cites as an inspiration for the game's presentation.
Oh my
You can also
God.
see this in the title of the game's studio, Heart Machine, and in the giant, literal Titan's heart you can find, that, despite
Your
being
hardest
robbed of a
struggle is
body,
your greatest
continues to
inspiration.
beat. Like the drowned giant, one of the Titans has been disrespectfully
Oh, are those
cut to
eyeballs?
pieces, and yet its fractured parts continue to function. Alex Preston,
With that slimy
who's
stuff
still making
connected
games,
to
by
it.
the way,
Oh!
knew Hyperlight Drifter might be his last ever project.
Oh,
and yet he
that's
pushed through
sad.
And created something that will last into the future.
But he's still going. Oh my God.
At the end of The Drowned Giant,
Oh,
the narrator
going back.
is surprised to find some of the being's bones have become part of the town. Its scattered remains becoming structures
Oh, who got the
and supports
skull?
for houses.
Apparently no
Though the
one. It's
giant is
decaying as well.
gone, its influence is not. It reminds me of a story in Norse mythology. Though
Hey.
only briefly mentioned in God of
fan of
War,
Norse
in
mythology.
the original Norse myth, there's another giant-turned-divine corpse called Ymir. Following his
Hey,
death,
I actually know
Ymir's
that one.
body becomes the foundation for the entire world. Out of Ymir's flesh was fashioned the earth, and
Yeah.
the mountains were made of his bones, the sky from the cold frost giant's skull, and the ocean out of his blood. Something can still be made from the body
I
of a
love
fallen
Norse mythology,
Leviathan,
man.
even if it isn't the same as it once was. Maybe it's wrong of
I'm
me
going back
wish
to the whale.
Levias had stayed the same.
Levi's, sorry.
I don't know what
should
life
call you by your
he
name.
nurtured, what ecosystems
Respect the dead,
fed upon his remains.
even if it's fictional.
Levias still exists, both in my memories and on my Wii if I
I was about to say, you
could
could just boot up the game.
from a video game.
Yeah.
But, you know, metaphor.
Metaphor,
The
I got it.
Leviathan of civilization
You drawing
also
me the
still
moment, like the
endures.
first sentence,
Though
man.
much of Breath of the Wild's world has been destroyed, there are pockets of survivors from which a community could reemerge. Maybe that society would revere Levias, not for the god of the skies he once was, but for the modest shelter his remains now offer.
Uh-huh.
Zelda games have always had a sense
Think of not of
decaying
what I was,
divinity.
but what I
The
will
land
become.
itself was once something sacred and is now decomposing. Even the brightest titles can capture this feeling, but there's also a
That's the reason why I got a Switch, was for that
not
game.
all is lost.
I loved it on Game Boy.
The world can still be rebuilt.
It should have
on
been
the
that
ruins
game.
Of what came before. The giant is still alive
Don't
for me,
do that.
the narrator states at the end of The Drowned Giant. I often dream of his resurrection, a colossus, striding through the streets of town, picking up the
Aw.
fragments of himself on his return journey to the sea.
Oh.
And as always,
Oh,
thanks for
don't be
watching.
over.
If
What?
you enjoyed this
Oh
entry,
my God, I
please
could
lend
like
your support
sit there and
by
watch this
liking,
for
subscribing,
hours,
and hitting
man.
the notification icon to stay up to date on all things curious. See you in the next
God, like I
video.
said multiple times, man, he has such a way with narration. Like, his storytelling is so freaking perfect. Dare I say it's to die for. Lack of a better word, man. Pretty topical with the video, but oh man, that's so good. I'm gonna cry. Alright, man, so that was something special, and like I mean that like wholeheartedly, man, the most sincere way I can. Like, it was so freaking cool to like just experience this. Like, essentially he's just like reading his own story to me in a way, like through video essay, but it's just like literally, like I said at the very end, man, it's to die for. Like, this was so good. And like it kind of started with like, okay, what happens if a god, like when a god dies, to like it metamorphosized into something like way greater than that. Like, okay, well, death is just the beginning, you know? Like, you can use your own death to help others in a way that like the whale bones or carcasses do in the bottom of the ocean. Like, they, like he said, like they form their own ecosystems and stuff inside there, and like in itself creates more life, you know? So like, it's just a cycle, man, like the circle of life, like Lion King and stuff like that. Like, it's just, it makes you ponder so much, but like, not the scientific pondering, but like your own like mental code, I guess, lack of a better word. Like, it's just so freaking crazy how to like just thinking about that, and like the whole like pollution aspect of it. Like, we are ultimately destroying the planet that we live in, that we call home, like just for like what, profit? Like, that's so freaking stupid to me. Like, we live on this rock, like we should like be nurturing it, man. Like, we should be like doing everything we can to make it as good as it can be, you know? But humanity being like as dumb as they are, like lack of a better word again, but like we just like constantly, every single chance we get, we just trash it like all the high hell, man. And like, I cannot stand that. Like, even I'm like, obviously I'm being a hypocrite here because I am a human, I do that same thing. So like, it's just like this moral code inside you that like, if you have a big one, like you constantly fight with it. But like this video definitely shed light on that, man. It like really makes me think about that stuff, and like for the better in my opinion, because like everything about this, like I did know certain key aspects like God of War, obviously, Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that, but like for you to like find similarities and like pull them apart and like put them in your story and stuff like that to help narrate and everything, like that was phenomenal, man. Like, I cannot get enough of this stuff, and like I definitely need to check out more Curious Archives, and thank you everybody that had this suggestions and stuff. But ultimately this title gripped me, man, like, and for good reason, man. I love that so much. Like, just the topic alone, like everything he said was so good. So I'm gonna stop praising it, man, because this video is going on for a little bit, but I love it so freaking much. I'm probably gonna have to like rewatch it while I edited it, just without me talking, man. It's so good. And if you haven't seen this with me not talking, man, definitely watch the original. That should go without saying in every single thing I react to. So thank you everybody so much for watching. Leave a like down below, subscribe, ring the bell, become a member. You get videos a day early, and check out the merch. So with that said, I have been Master Zero. Y'all guys have been fantastic, and I'll see y'all in the next episode. Later days.